I actually remember, I have a distinct memory of when I was, I think probably 8 or 10, when I got my first allowance. And the very first thing I did with that allowance is to go to a stationer and buy an accountant's ledger. And the very first thing I wrote in there was accountant's ledger. I've always been drawn to that, kind of the power, if you like, of numbers and how it can, like I said, help to solve problems, but also to illuminate, it sounds big, but illuminate truths in things. My parents have been always were and have been like the major role models in my life. So my father worked a very corporate job, and I remember actually trips with him to his office. So he worked the stock exchange, and this was the time when it wasn't digital yet. So literally people were like, throwing their hands up and all of that. He wanted to expose me to that, that sort of like working life. It stayed with me. It stayed with me very, very strongly, actually. My mother was a full-time stay-at-home parent, and she started very small, sort of making 1 or 2 cakes and delivering it to the cafe around the corner. And then, sort of 10, 15 years later, basically being the main supplier of cakes to the royal family. It's, just that sense of like entrepreneurship, creativity, and just the drive. I think it's really interesting, the point in your life or point in your career when you realize that, everyone's always learning. So, you constantly want to, look up to people that you can learn from. But you get to a point in your career where you suddenly go, actually, I might have something to teach, And this has happened to me, I think, in the last couple of years or so. But in that process, you learn so much about yourself. It's really powerful, actually, I think. I think there are a lot of really fantastic women in this industry that are doing really amazing jobs that we just don't see. I think we need to kind of, find these people and talk to them. Kind of normalize, actually, this, successful women in the industry so people can see them all the time and they're not like on pedestals. They are just normal people doing really great work. I think what I would say to young people is don't be afraid to bring what you have, what makes you special to the table, because you will be able to find, something in that will work really, really well for this industry. So up until my children, I was a competitive ballroom dancer. It's interesting because it was such a huge part of my life for so many years. And I remember when I sort of first gave it up, and I don't even like to say gave it up, but when I first stopped dancing as much as I did, it was almost a bit of a knock to my sense of identity. But what I've learned actually over the years is the sort of energy and commitment that you have to put into something like that to become just a little bit better every day. And all of that is so much part of me. So even though I don't dance competitively anymore, I tap into that experience all the time, really. I mean, it's very hard to kind of, take a static view, right? Like, just look at yourself now and go, am I successful? Am I not successful? I mean, I think when you look back on what you've done recently and you can feel genuine pride, for me, that's part of the definition of success. You get to the point where you look back and you're like, this work has had meaning. This was an interesting challenge to look back on your life and think about, an object that really kind of personifies who you are. So what I learned actually through this process is Athena is the goddess of wisdom. And I think that is something that is, something I always strive for. She's also the goddess of war. I think there's just something about that where, you do a little bit of battle every day and you want to finish the day knowing that you've done a good job. And I think that element of of her really kind of appealed to me as well.